evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of A Closer Look, the show dedicated to bringing you the facts. We ask the questions no one else will, and we get the answers that no one else can. Tonight, we're coming to you from the penthouse suite at the Atlantis Resort on Paradise Island for a very special edition of A Closer Look. This is ACL Presents Conversations with NIB. By now, Bahamians across the country are aware of the major interventions planned for NIB starting July 1st. But what they may not know are the why, the how, and what it means for average, everyday Bahamians. We know you have questions, and tonight, with the help of officials at NIB, we're here to provide some answers. For this two-part series, we took to the streets to hear directly from you regarding your concerns, questions, and more. And those questions will be answered by my panel of esteemed guests. Joining me for this very important conversation are NIB Acting Director Heather Maynard, Dr. Tammy Francis, who is the Deputy Director of Operations and Actuarial Services, and Trevor Bryce, who is the Senior Manager of Compliance. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
When we return, we jump right into our conversation with our panel, so stay tuned because A Closer Look Presents is back after the break.
Un, deux, trois. Elle m'attendra. Elle m'attendra. Elle m'attendra. Et comment lui faire savoir? Comment la convaincre? Ça peut-être changé. Ça peut-être sera permis. Reviendra-t-il? Elle me donne pas.
Welcome back. You're watching A Closer Look Presents Conversations with NIB. Thanks so much for joining us. Now, I want to give this lovely panel of mine an opportunity to tell us a little bit about themselves and the work they do with NIB. And I'll start with you, Acting Director.
Good evening again. My name is Heather Maynard. I'm the Acting Director of the National Insurance Board. I'm in charge basically of the National Insurance Board. I ensure that all of the administrative functions take place. I ensure that the board is operating efficiently. And it's a pleasure to be here tonight.
Thank you so much for being here. Dr. Francis.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Tammy Francis, and I am a 22-year veteran of the National Insurance Board. I have the awesome task of reviewing our country's demographic information. It gives me the responsibility to provide some type of recommendations to the board with regards to sustainability of the fund. I have a double hat. I am also responsible for the operations area, and it's never a dull moment in that area, and that area encompasses pretty much the heart of NIB.
Mr. Bryce.
Good evening. My name is Trevor Bryce. I'm the Senior Manager of the Compliance Department. In my role, I'm responsible for supervising and directing the inspectors who are pretty much the compliance officers of the board. And so, like Dr. Francis, in the compliance area, there's always something going on. It's a very active area. So it's a pleasure to be here tonight.
Thank you all so much for being here, ladies and gentlemen. Clearly, we have some heavy hitters from NIB, so we're expecting lots of great information for you to take away from this particular episode of ACL Presents. So we can just jump right into the conversation, and I want to start with you, Acting Director, because I think the question on most people's minds is, how we get here? You know, they want to know, because NIB has been around for as long as most of us have been alive, you know? And so it is now interesting to think that something that we have known to be in existence for all of these years could possibly be going away. So how did we get here? Tell our viewing audience how we landed in this particular situation.
Well, actually, National Insurance Board is celebrating its 50th year anniversary this year, and we are going to continue to maintain our sustainability. The reason we're here now is because we've only had one contribution rate increase in the past 50 years.
Wow. Okay.
That rate increase occurred with the introduction of the unemployment benefit program, and thank God for that increase, because during COVID-19, hundreds of thousands of Bahamians were able to get the required assistance they needed during that pandemic. And so we're here because we offer a wonderful, generous package. But guess what? We pay, like, we're the fourth lowest paying nation in terms of the rate. And so in order to sustain the fund, we have to now increase the contribution rate. Remember, there's only been one increase in the past 50 years. And we offer like amazing benefits. We offer all of the benefits, but yet we have to, we're not getting the required contributions in to pay for this wide array of benefits.
Well, we took to the streets in order to get questions from the general public. Persons had a lot to say, and I want to go through some of those questions with you all. And so let's take a look at the first question from a Miss Linda Neely.
My question to the executives is that why now the contributions are being raised? Why now? That's more money coming out of our salary as well. We already complaining that we're not making as much. So why now the increase?
Well, I mean, well, Tommy, you seem like you want to take a swing at this question, so we'll come to you first.
Well, essentially, at least once every 5 years, NIB is mandated by law to conduct what is called an actuarial review. And what that review does is it helps to determine the viability and sustainability of the National Insurance Fund. As a matter of fact, we would have had previous reports, and as far back as 2001 for our 7th actuarial review, that would have indicated that the current or the existing contribution rate would not be sufficient to help sustain the fund in years to come. So right now, unfortunately, we are looking at saving the fund. We had the luxury of delaying in past years, but we can delay no more. So the time to act is right now. We are looking at ensuring that the fund will be there beyond 2028. When I retire, I'm looking forward to a retirement pension, and I'm sure you and the rest of the Bahamas and our workers, they're looking forward to the same.
Absolutely. I think that's one thing that most Bahamians, if not all Bahamians, can agree is important, and that is securing the fund. Let's jump right into our next question, and this one comes from Chester Robards, who is a senior business reporter from the Nassau Guardian. Take a look at his question.
Well, as the Bahamian people prepare to invest more into their retirement savings, I'm wondering if the National Insurance Board, as they have to produce annual reports, will be on time with those reports moving forward.
So that's an interesting question, Mr. Chester Robards, a former student of mine.
Oh, wow.
But the National Insurance Board, of course, we are a public entity. We are a quasi-governmental organization. And our business, of course, is the public's business. So every year, we have an annual report that is available on our website. It is a public document. In this annual report, you are able to get all of the information regarding our operational aspects, our financial statements, as well as the independent auditor's report. All of that is available. So you are able to get down into that. I mean, there is an executive summary in our report, but you are able to get deep into the report and find out the ins and outs of national insurance.
Right. Well, it's really good to know that information is readily available for persons who want to see it, who want to read it, who want to delve in, like you said. So that's a very interesting point, I think. Our next question comes from a local employer. His name is Simon Smith. Let's take a look at his question.
Well, I'd like to know, what is NIB's investment portfolio? What are they investing our money on? And is there any way I can go online and find out where the money is going, how much money we're getting back from the investments?
It's a very good question. Okay, Director?
Well, by law, actually, Section 44 of the National Insurance Act, we are mandated to do certain investments, and there's a third schedule to that act which lays out all of our investments. We keep a diversified portfolio which allows us to pay long-term pension payments and also allows us for liquidity in when we need cash on hand. All of this is found in our, just like Dr. Francis mentioned earlier, in our annual reports. There's the reports outline all of our investments.
Well, I think it's an important point to make as well, that the NIB's investment strategy is one that is cautious. It's not we're not going after every single type of investment, I imagine.
Well, as indicated before, we have to follow what the National Insurance Act says, and we're guided by Section 44 and the third schedule to Section 44, which actually details what type of investments we can make. And even if we invest overseas, our minister has to consult with the Minister of Finance.
Can you give us an idea of some of the types of investments that are allowed under law?
Securities, government treasury, bonds, finance leases, and all of these have to be approved by the board and the minister.
Yeah, and persons looking for this type of information, like we said, it's available in the actual reports that are on the NIB website.
Yes,
absolutely.
Everything's available to the public.
So there is a high level of transparency.
Yes, there is.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think that's a good place for us to take our first break of the evening. So when we return, our Q&A with NIB continues. Stay with us.
So a few years ago, I found out that I had a pre-existing condition. It eventually got debilitating over time to a point where I could not work. So I did have to take the time off to do the surgery so that I could be able to get back to work and get back to my regular daily habits. There is that relief to know that at the end of the day, I'm not alone. I still have something that I can fall back on at the end of the day to still take care of me. So it is that comfort.
Welcome back. Tonight, we're having a special conversation about the changes coming to the National Insurance Board and the country's safety security network. And we're hearing directly from the men and women at the helm of NIB. And I want to jump right into our next batch of questions. Y'all ready?
Yes.
Okay, our next question, and this is one question that seems particularly important to a lot of the persons who have questions about the upcoming rate increase. Let's take a look at this question from Javon Williams.
Okay, so here's my question. Does the government borrow money from NIB? And if so, do they actually have to pay that back?
Well, that is an interesting question, and it is one that a lot of Bahamians want to know. So I'm opening the floor.
Well, government entities have borrowed monies from NIB, but the borrowing actually is subject to structured agreements, and they do pay us back with interest.
That's good to know. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it straight from the director herself. The money is paid back with interest.
Yes.
Okay, so we
get a return.
Absolutely, as you should.
Yes.
So we've heard it directly again from the director's mouth. Let's not get carried away in these questions, because I think that was one of the things that we have heard over and over in terms of concerns from the Bahamian public. Let's look at the way NIB is approaching revenue. And I think that's our next question from Guardian Talk Show host, C.A. Nuri. Let's take a look at this question.
Well, what I want to know also is, has NIB exhausted all of their collecting monies from various places, like wealthy people, like the government agencies, NGOs? Have they gone to all these places and say, hey, I collected my set of money from you all? Have they done that, exhausted all of that?
Okay, well, this sounds like
I'll take
a
that.
question for Mr. Bryce.
Certainly. So yes, the compliance department, which I manage, has direct responsibility for ensuring that all employers pay contributions to the National Insurance Board. It's mandated by law. So regardless of the size or type, small, medium, large, all entities are required to pay contributions once they operate a business. Mm-hmm. And so what we've done, and it's a continuous process, because what we do is we've put in place strategies where we go after the employers. We put in place payment plans to assist them when they may not be able to pay in full. We also are making it easier for employers to pay those contributions. We've set up the Employer Self-Service Portal, and an additional means to assist employers with being able to make those contributions. Where that fails, we are also empowered by the legislation to go after those employers and create a legal a prosecution matter, which then goes before the court. And once it goes before the court, then they're required to make those contribution payments.
Mm-hmm. Is that something that happens often in terms of your compliance department? Are you seeing a number of cases where persons have to be brought before the courts regarding NIB payment?
Yeah, that is happening on a daily basis, where we and actually the going to court is our last resort. Mm-hmm. So usually we work with employers as best as we can, mm-hmm. But when it gets to the point where the conversation is no longer working out, and we then have to take it prepare the file for prosecution, that happens on a daily basis, and so those files will then be advanced to our legal department, who will then take the matters to court.
Director?
I'm also in charge of the legal department.
Yeah.
And so I can verify that we're prosecuting all the time. We prosecute in all the family annals, believe it or not. Mm-hmm. And once those persons receive a summons, a lot of times they pay in full or they produce their records, because we have several offenses under the National Insurance Act. So we have a very active prosecution department, and it's supposed to act as a deterrent to failing to pay your contributions or failing to produce your records as required by an inspector.
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you guys are paying close attention, because we're definitely getting a wealth of information from our panel. When we return, we continue to field your questions, so stay tuned.
Hear what Boss Man was saying in the back there just now? About what? The luncheon? Why you always worried about food? No, about how we gotta pay a little more for national insurance. Mildred, you talking fool. I can't afford to pay that. And you're always crying, palm out. Ain't gonna be much. Boss still gotta pay. 1st of July, 2024.
I think that terminal benefit is what did help my boy Tony through the pandemic. That same unemployment benefit. And guess what?
What?
Susan, I think she'd get a pregnancy benefit, eh?
You mean maternity benefit, eh? So now, we gotta do our part to make sure we get our pension. All right, well, let me try and go back to work, you see, boss.
Welcome back. You're watching A Closer Look Presents Conversations with National Insurance. Our next question, as we've been fielding from the public, comes from local business owner Adam Trigo. Let's take a look at his question.
Is there any way that we can make applying for cards, adding to the system, asking for sick leave benefits and maternity leave benefits directly from the website itself to avoid all of the technical know-how needed to do things currently, or to avoid having everybody still funneling into the locations in the first place? I guess my main thing is can the website be made more efficient and streamlined for customer and employer use?
Very, very interesting and important question. Director, you care to take this one?
Oh, I'm so excited to announce that we have reforms coming in the technology arena. We have the C10 app, which is the mobile application for contribution submissions and payments. We have the online card renewal. We have the online claim submission. So you could actually make a claim online instead of coming physically to the office. So that's wonderful. And then we have the revamp of our website. In other words, making it more user friendly. So we're working for our customers.
Absolutely. I think that's very important information. And I want to take the opportunity now to encourage Bahamians to really take advantage of the online options that are becoming available and to become active participants in their own employment journey, right? And to be a part of the work that NIB is also doing. So our next question comes from retired banker Kaynell Gould. Let's take a look at Ms. Gould's question.
My major concern, and I'm sure I speak for numerous Bahamians, is there anything that NIB can do to avoid another rate increase in the upcoming years?
Well, that is a very valid question. I think it's one that's on the minds of Bahamians, surely, especially as we look at the economic conditions around us. So, Dr. Francis, you care to take this one?
Well, as the acting director would have indicated, NIB would have had only one rate increase since its inception. And of course, no scheme would be designed to operate on an increase of only 1% throughout its almost 50-year span. But with regards to additional options, the 11th actuarial review would have indicated several recommendations in addition to the contribution rate increase. Now, these additional options we can look at those to work in tandem with the contribution rate increase, but the contribution rate is the best option. Now, some of those recommendations, they include, for example, and I'm sure there has been a lot of chatter about increasing the retirement age from age 65 to 67. But just to explain that a little bit, movement from the retirement age of 65 to 67 is not something that would happen just overnight. Right. That will be a gradual process. And depending on the option that we take to increase the retirement age, that can take anywhere from 12 to 24 years. And this is to ensure that individuals who are at the point of the retirement age are not disenfranchised as we gradually move towards the age of 67. There were also other recommendations made within the actuarial review. For example, the adjustment to the benefit accrual rate, meaning the way we calculate our retirement pension or our long-term pensions. We would scale back a bit to ensure that the viability of the fund is there, meaning our pensions branch is able to sustain and support our 46,000 plus pensioners today. And just to add to it, I want persons to understand that National Insurance, we take care of our pensioners in paying out approximately $28 million per month to these individuals. But some of these options, we will take a look at these options, but right now we are concentrating more so on the contribution rate itself.
So the short answer to this question would be no. There is nothing that we can be doing outside of this rate increase, correct?
Well, what I can say is that our government is looking into a number of different options. They are also looking at other jurisdictions and looking at local trends to determine whether or not additional increases are needed. So they will be guided by, and we will be guided by, these deliberations.
Awesome. Okay, our next question, ladies and gentlemen, come from Gabriella Martin. Let's take a look at what she has to say.
My concern would be that now that the reserve at NIB is running low for pensioners, what would the future look like for someone like myself when it comes time for me to retire and receive pension?
And that's definitely something that Dr. Francis has been alluding to all evening. So I think at this point, why should young Bahamians care about NIB? Why should they be, lining up to make their contributions?
Well, at NIB, we operate on an intergenerational model. What this means is our workers of today, they made their contributions, and those contributions then they are able to pay the benefits for our retirees. These contributions are also used for our short-term claimants. That's our maternity, sickness, unemployment, and so on. Now, what's very interesting is at the inception of national insurance, we would have had 8 contributors to every 1 pensioner. But today, we have, for instance, approximately 3.1, so let's say about 3 contributors to every 1 pensioner. So it is very important. This contribution rate increase is something that is very important that the entire country needs to embrace and understand the importance and the need for national insurance to have this option put forth.
Absolutely. Yes, the demographics are changing. We have an aging population and fewer Bahamian parents are having children.
I don't think that's something that people consider as one of the factors impacting the fund. I don't think that that is necessarily how people see it. It is more, the fund exists, and when it's my turn, I will be able to access, right? And so I think the message or the mission now is, like Dr. Francis has said, is to get everybody involved, right? And for everybody to understand how they play a role. Okay, so Mr. Bryce, do you have anything that you'd like to add to what the director and what Dr. Francis have said so far?
Yeah, so as the director would have indicated that we are presently facing a challenge when it comes to population, and so it also means then that every generation has to continually contribute to the fund in order for it to be there for a future generation.
Yeah,
and so each of us make a contribution so that when it's our time, funds are there for us.
Absolutely. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think this is the perfect place to pause our conversation, at least for now. I want to thank you all so much for being here. You've provided so many insights, so much great information that I think our viewing public will really appreciate and really latch on to. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Our Closer Look Presents is back right after this, so stay tuned.
During 2020, in the COVID era, more things had transitioned to online, emailing, submitting the forms virtually, and I found that very convenient personally because I like to do everything online. I will buy groceries, I will buy water online if I can. And so I found that in that manner, a little more efficient for me personally because I like to do things online.
Welcome back. Tonight, we've been attempting to answer your pressing NIB questions here in the home of one of the largest employers in the country. We've tackled issues related to NIB's investments, to the future of benefits, and so much more. We hope you've learned a lot, and we hope you've been able to take some major insights away from the responses of our NIB panelists. In part 2 of our special series on the nation's Social Security Network, we'll continue to ask the questions you need the answers to. Be sure to join us next week as we continue our very important conversations on NIB. Till next time, Bahamas. Good night, everyone.